Welcome back to the Senior Health Podcast, where wisdom meets wellness, and where each discussion is crafted with the hope that it strengthens not only your knowledge, but your future. Today's episode carries a level of seriousness that feels personal, because year after year, strokes remain one of the most sudden and devastating threats facing adults over 60. They strike without fanfare, without warning, and often at a time when most people feel the safest, during the early morning hours, in the quiet moments when the day is just beginning. Yet hidden inside those quiet hours are early hints, subtle cues, and everyday habits that can shift the odds dramatically, whether for better or worse. This is why today's topic matters. So many people go through their mornings on autopilot, repeating the same routines they've had for decades without ever questioning whether those habits serve them well. A cup of coffee before anything else. Sitting on the edge of the bed for 10, 20, even 30 minutes before standing. Skipping breakfast because hunger doesn't arrive right away. Checking the news before taking a breath. These moments may feel harmless, even comforting, yet they can create conditions in the body that heighten vulnerability at the very time when the brain needs stability most. What if understanding these patterns could offer protection? What if recognizing them could prevent a catastrophe? To help us uncover these details, we're joined once again by a man whose insight spans more than a century of life and medical practice. Dr. Shigeki Hinohara has guided generations of patients, researchers, and caregivers through the complexities of aging. His approach blends deep scientific understanding with a lifelong commitment to observing how the body speaks long before it fails. His presence is a reminder that longevity isn't just about reaching a certain age. It's about living with clarity about what the body needs at every stage. "Thank you, John," he responds, his voice steady and warm, carrying the calm confidence that only decades of experience can shape. What we're talking about today is something every older adult should know. Strokes almost never arrive as lightning bolts from a clear sky. They develop through signals, soft ones, early ones, and many of those signals reveal themselves during the first hours of the day. If people understood those tiny whispers, they'd have far more control over their well-being than they realize. And that is the heart of today's episode, the whispers. Not the dramatic symptoms we tend to associate with medical emergencies, but the quiet indicators that something in the brain or cardiovascular system needs attention. Over the next segments, we will unfold what those whispers sound like, how they show up, and which morning habits may be amplifying them without your awareness. But for this opening conversation, let today serve as your invitation to listen more closely, to pay attention to the internal language your body uses long before it raises its voice. Most people think of medical crises as events tied to exertion or stressful moments, during a busy afternoon, while lifting something heavy, or during an argument. Yet for millions of older adults, the most precarious minutes of the entire day unfold long before any of that begins. They occur in the quiet transition between sleep and wakefulness, when the mind is still groggy, the room still dim, and the body has just completed hours without nourishment or movement. During the night, the body loses fluid through breathing and normal metabolic processes, and by morning the blood becomes slightly thicker than it was the day before. At the same time, blood vessels naturally constrict, and the stress hormone cortisol surges as part of the body's built-in wake-up mechanism. For younger individuals, the cardiovascular system compensates effortlessly. For older adults, especially those with stiffened arteries or mild hypertension, this combination places significant strain on circulation before the day has even begun. Dr. Hinohara speaks about this shift with the calm clarity of someone who has observed it in thousands of patients. Your brain wakes before you do, he says, offering a simple yet profound truth. While the body is still adjusting, muscles inactive, joints stiff, hydration low, the brain has already begun demanding oxygen and steady blood flow. This mismatch between what the brain needs and what the body is ready to deliver is precisely why seniors are so vulnerable during the early hours. The physiology of aging makes the morning less forgiving, especially when paired with habits that unintentionally intensify strain. Consider how many older adults start their day, rising quickly, heading straight for medication or coffee, remaining seated for long stretches, or checking messages and news updates before their circulation fully engages. These behaviors, though ordinary, add layers of pressure to a system already under morning stress. Rushing amplifies cortisol even further. Staying still allows blood to pool in the legs. Skipping water delays the dilution the bloodstream needs. And diving into emotional triggers, emails, headlines, tasks, adds mental tension to a body that is already operating under its natural morning peak of stress hormones. When these factors stack together, they create conditions in which the brain is forced to work harder to maintain equilibrium. It's not a dramatic shift, it's a quiet one. But quiet pressure is still pressure, and the brain is an organ that depends on precise, consistent flow. Anything that disrupts that rhythm, even briefly, can contribute to a cascade of micro-changes, each small on its own but meaningful when repeated day after day. Understanding this vulnerability is not meant to alarm anyone. Instead, it's a reminder that mornings require a different kind of respect as we age. Hydration, gentle movement, and a slower transition can serve as safeguards, supporting the brain during a period when it works hardest to recalibrate. Awareness of these morning dynamics isn't merely helpful. It is a foundational step in reducing risk and supporting long-term neurological health. When most people think about strokes, their minds go straight to the obvious red flags: words coming out garbled, half the face failing to move, the sudden inability to stand or walk. Those are the dramatic events anyone would recognize. Yet what often goes unnoticed are the earliest, quietest disruptions that begin long before any emergency. These early signals don't resemble a crisis at all. In fact, they often masquerade as ordinary aging, the kind of small inconveniences people shrug off with a sigh and a comment about getting older. But these subtle misfires can hold far more meaning than they appear to on the surface. For many adults over 60, one of the first clues that something isn't quite right shows up in coordination. You reach for a familiar object, something you've handled thousands of times, and your hand doesn't land exactly where you expect. A cup wobbles slightly in your grip. A pen doesn't sit correctly between your fingers. You go to place your foot into a shoe, and it feels just a little off. These moments might last only seconds, and they may happen only once or twice before the mind labels them harmless. But the brain does not send these signals without cause. Dr. Hinohara often speaks of these tiny lapses with deep seriousness, because he has seen how powerful they can be when recognized early. He recalls a patient, a 74-year-old retired accountant, who came to his clinic not for pain, but for confusion about his own clumsiness. He had started dropping his keys more often. He needed a second attempt to button his shirt. His handwriting looked different than usual. None of it seemed alarming on its own. And yet, during a visit to the grocery store, he paused mid-list, unable for several seconds to recall how to spell a word he had written thousands of times throughout his life. He dismissed it as fatigue. His wife dismissed it as stress. But Dr. Hinohara did not. After asking a few pointed questions and running a series of tests, the truth came forward. The man had experienced a transient ischemic attack, a TIA, a brief blockage of blood flow to the brain that doesn't always leave lasting damage, but almost always serves as a critical warning. A TIA is often referred to as a warning stroke, but many people never know they've had one unless they recognize the changes in their body and seek help. "We caught it just in time," Dr. Hinohara says with quiet emphasis. If he had waited, he would likely have faced a much more serious stroke within days. That intervention altered the man's path completely. His medications were adjusted, lifestyle habits refined, and his risk dropped dramatically. This is why the small signs matter. Not because they guarantee an emergency is coming, but because they open a window. One that is narrow, one that closes quickly, but one that can change the outcome of an entire lifetime if someone pays attention. A transient ischemic attack, or TIA, often slips under the radar because the body seems to recover so quickly. The fleeting nature of the symptoms leads many people to believe it was nothing more than fatigue, stress, or a passing lapse in concentration. Yet medically, A TIA is one of the clearest warnings the brain can give. It is a temporary interruption in blood flow, a momentary shortage of oxygen and nutrients that the brain treats as an emergency even if the person experiencing it doesn't. The symptoms may fade within minutes, but the biological message behind them does not fade at all. Research has shown just how critical this warning truly is. In one of the largest long-term studies examining stroke patterns, patients who experienced a TIA faced their highest risk of a full stroke within the first 48 hours. Those 2 days form a narrow, high-stakes window during which intervention has the power to dramatically alter outcomes. When individuals received evaluation and treatment within that period, the likelihood of a major stroke dropped by more than 80%. That level of risk reduction is almost unheard of in medicine. It means the difference between independence and disability, between recovery and long-term complications, between a passing scare and a life-changing event. Dr. Hinohara emphasizes this point with unmistakable conviction. The brain never malfunctions without a reason, he says. When a hand falters, when a word disappears, when a familiar movement feels unfamiliar, that is not aging. That is blood flow. His statement cuts through the excuses people so often make. The body does not send false alarms for no reason. Every slip in coordination, every moment of confusion, every unexpected lapse in movement represents a shift in how the brain is being supplied. The problem is that most people don't connect these changes to vascular health. They assume it's normal. They assume it's temporary. By the time the symptoms escalate into something undeniable, the opportunity for early intervention may already be gone. The real tragedy lies in how easily these warnings are dismissed. Few people rush to seek medical attention after dropping a fork or losing a word for a few seconds. Fewer still recognize these moments as neurological signals. But the brain is subtle before it becomes severe. It whispers before it shouts. Missing those whispers allows risk to climb, often quietly, often invisibly, until a full stroke occurs without a second chance. This is why understanding not just the symptoms but the environment that contributes to them is so powerful. The brain does not exist in isolation. It responds to everything we do, especially during the early hours of the day. Blood pressure, hydration, movement, stress levels, and metabolic shifts all influence cerebral circulation the moment we wake. The habits we practice in the morning can either stabilize that system or strain it. And as we move into the next part of our conversation, we'll explore how these daily choices, often harmless at first glance, can either safeguard brain health or quietly increase the likelihood of future events. The first habit is skipping water. Most people wake up, head straight to the bathroom, glance at their phone, maybe prepare coffee, but never drink water. After 8 hours of sleep, your blood behaves like a sponge without moisture, thicker, slower, and more prone to clotting. A large European study found hydration was a contributing factor in nearly half of first-time morning ischemic strokes. Your brain doesn't want stimulation first, Dr. Hinohara says.
It wants circulation.
1 glass of room-temperature water before anything else can dramatically improve morning blood flow. The second habit is sitting too long in bed. Seniors often wake, sit on the edge of the mattress, scroll on a phone, or remain still for 20 minutes or more. But after lying down all night, sitting motionless allows blood to pool in the lower body, slowing its return to the brain. Older vessels are less elastic, and this stagnation puts pressure on the heart and arteries. Gentle ankle rolls, shoulder circles, and a slow rise to standing are enough to restart safe morning circulation.
The third habit is skipping breakfast.
Many older adults drink coffee, take medications, and eat nothing for hours. But without morning nutrients, blood sugar dips, and the brain, which stores almost no glucose, struggles. Combine that with medication on an empty stomach, and the stage is set for dizziness, confusion, or vascular instability. A small protein-based breakfast, a spoonful of yogurt, half an egg, a few nuts, is all it takes to stabilize the system. The fourth habit is rushing into stress. Checking the news before your feet touch the floor, opening emails, answering messages. These load cognitive pressure onto a brain already experiencing its natural cortisol surge. A long-term study of tens of thousands of adults showed that psychological stress early in the day significantly increased stroke risk, especially in people over 60. A calm buffer of 10 quiet minutes, light stretching, or simply breathing with intention gives the brain the transition it needs. And finally, the fifth and most dangerous habit, extended stillness. For many retirees, the morning begins with an hour of sitting, on the bed, at the table, on the couch. But prolonged morning inactivity doubles the stroke risk for older adults, even if you exercise later. The first hour sets the vascular rhythm for the entire day. Light movement, a short walk, marching in place, anything that tells your circulatory system the day has begun, creates a protective shift the brain depends on. What today's conversation highlights is a truth that often gets overshadowed by the dramatic images associated with stroke. Most strokes don't erupt out of clear skies. They take shape over time, woven quietly into the fabric of daily routines, gathering momentum through patterns we dismiss as harmless or inevitable. The danger hides not in rare events, but in small, consistent choices that gradually shape the condition of the brain and the vessels that supply it. Morning habits, in particular, play an outsized role because they interact with the body at a moment when it is naturally more vulnerable. When blood pressure is rising, when the circulatory system is recalibrating, and when the brain is transitioning into full activity. Yet these moments often go unnoticed, overshadowed by the rush to meet the day. The 5 habits we've explored in this discussion are striking precisely because of how ordinary they are. They don't involve extreme behavior or reckless decisions. They're woven into everyday life, delaying that first sip of water, staying seated too long upon waking, avoiding even a small breakfast, stepping into stress before the body is ready, or easing into the day with stillness rather than movement. They appear benign on the surface, but physiological processes tell a different story. Each one nudges the body slightly off balance, and when combined over weeks, months, or years, the effects can compound to create an environment that favors strain rather than resilience. Awareness is what transforms these habits from risks into opportunities. The moment someone becomes conscious of how the morning affects their brain, they gain the power to intervene. And that intervention doesn't demand radical change or complicated routines. It depends on choices so simple they can be implemented starting tomorrow. A glass of water replenishes what was lost overnight. Gentle movement signals the circulatory system to awaken safely. A small portion of food steadies blood sugar. A pause before interacting with stressful information lowers strain. A few minutes of activity break the pattern of morning stagnation. Each action acts like a stabilizing thread, reinforcing the body's natural rhythm instead of fighting against it. Dr. Hinohara often speaks with a warmth that reflects both his experience and his gratitude for the body's capacity to adapt even late in life. As he smiles softly, he reminds us, longevity isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right small things, consistently. That message carries weight because it reframes the entire discussion. It shifts health from a daunting pursuit to something manageable, something rooted in awareness and gentle adjustments rather than drastic reinvention. If these insights have resonated with you, consider sharing them with someone who might benefit. A friend, a parent, a partner, anyone who begins their morning without realizing how much those first moments matter. Sometimes a single shift in routine, shared at the right time, can alter the trajectory of another person's health. One morning's awareness, passed forward, has the potential to spare someone from a crisis they never saw coming.